What is good, guys? It's your boy LDAWB coming at you with a new video. And today I'd like to talk about something really special and something that I've always wanted to do. It's something that I feel it's necessary in terms of setting a foundation in terms of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is arguably my favorite series of all time, and I plan on making more Final Fantasy content going forward. I have been studying and researching material on Final Fantasy 16 and trying to understand and learn and solve some mysteries and some loopholes. I think before all of that is ever established, I think the foundation has to be laid in terms of, okay, you're talking about all this Final Fantasy stuff. What is your background in Final Fantasy? Hence the reason for this video, to lay the foundation and to really show what are my favorite Final Fantasy games. So a little bit of some disclaimer, this is only my list. I know that everyone has a different list. There are so many Final Fantasies, they're all different in layout and design and presentation and gameplay. So this is not me saying that one is better than the other, it's just my opinion, my list. Feel free to share what yours are in the comments below and say why, and let's all appreciate the series together. Also, if by any chance I say an entry and it probably turns you off, you're like, no, I'm clicking away from this. No, just realize before you start to do that both you and I like the same series. If you don't agree with any of my entries, that's fine. It's all good. For me, if I watch someone's list, even though I don't agree with people's entries and their positions and why, it's their list, it's their opinion. It's okay. It's okay. Am I saying all of this to prepare for a disagreement? Maybe. Just know that my list is probably not going to reflect yours, and like I said, it's okay. It's all right. Anyway, I'm going to start with the top 5 Final Fantasies of all time. Enough with that chitter chatter. Let's get into it. Number 5, Final Fantasy 9. Okay, Final Fantasy 9. So why I put this on my number 5 bracket is very innocent, it's very charming, soundtrack is amazing, but more importantly, outside of those 3 things, this game has essentially made me draw deformed characters like the characters on Final Fantasy 9. Just the cast in general was a eye-opener for me. Itahana is the artist behind Final Fantasy 9, and he has done a phenomenal job of creating these characters. And it's funny because at first I thought it was Akihiko who actually made the illustrations, but it was Itahana this entire time. I used to own the art book back in the day. I absolutely loved drawing the faces with the no-nos and everything. That was something that I used to do growing up, drawing the same kind of deformed people with the big heads and the small bodies. Yeah. Taught me a really good form, even though the characters were unproportional, if that makes any sense. This was the first time also that I actually tried background art, and I was younger too, actually trying to draw castles and cities and then putting them into Photoshop and then making them as pastel, keeping that storybook authenticity in my own artworks, where it be it very messy and stuff like that. So it was charming, it was innocent, but more than anything, it was more impactful to me in terms of its design and art again than the actual gameplay. Honest to God, I'm not kidding you. I've only played this game all the way through twice. Yes, I know yeah, but more or less this game was a highlight for me because I loved how the characters in Final Fantasy 7 looked in the blocky and how chunky. Yeah, they were blocky, but this game, Final Fantasy 9, was basically saying, okay, let's use that formula or use that charm, blocky aesthetic, and let's enhance it. And then here is 9. And so for that, I will say kudos to the team for trying something new. Even though they were going back to the roots, the art style was still going forward, like in terms of 8. Sakaguchi was involved with 9. I believe this was his last one. It still holds up today. It's still a ridiculously awesome, terrific game. I also have been hearing rumors of an FF9 remake, and if it is indeed true that it is coming out, then I cannot wait to play that. I cannot wait to experience the art style again. And if it is indeed copying the KH formula, the action RPG formula that I'm a big fan of, I will be all over that in a bag of chips. You know your boy's gonna be all over that, okay? So yeah, number 5, Final Fantasy 9. Number 4 is going to Final Fantasy 13. That's right, Final Fantasy 13. Love it or hate it, it's on my number 4 because I love it so daggone much, it's not even funny. I like the fact that FF13 incorporated sci-fi and fantasy fusion aesthetics, and it combined themselves in a way that's very unique. I am a huge fan of Lightning and her weapon, the Blaze Fire Saber from what I understand, or the Blaze Edge, which is aesthetically a gun blade, and a sword, which is kind of enhancing the proposition of the gun blade from FF8. I dig it. I really love it so much. One of the best design elements from Nomura, in my opinion. Loved also the incorporation of the fusion design elements from both Odin and Lightning. When they both fuse together, that freaking motorcycle that Snow drives with the Shiva sisters, that is so over the top and so whoa, but it just, again, it's so cool. It's so cool. I love that design. I like Lightning, I like Odin, but that whole combination of Shiva and Snow and him decked out on a motorcycle is just, it's bananas to me. It's bananas. I love it so much. Also the soundtrack, and I want to point this out. The soundtrack was done by the lead composer at the time, Masashi Hamazu, who before has made compositions for Unlimited Saga, Saga Frontier 2. So this entry is the first time that he is actually lead composer. And I'm telling you, this soundtrack is phenomenal. It's total fire. To this day, Blinded by Light is one of the most best Final Fantasy tracks ever, along with Uematsu's tracks. Blinded by Light, if you have never listened to that track, please, by all means, listen to that track. It will save your life. You will be blinded by light just by listening to it. All kidding aside, it's really wonderful. And I think also I want to give homage to The Promise. The Promise is also a very somber and beautiful track to kind of reflect the theme of this game and really the atmosphere of 13 in general. So yeah, I also liked the battle system for 13. It was still turn-based of sorts, but it was more engaging. This was too, from what I understand, the introduction of the stagger system, which was a major highlight for me and something that I liked. I also liked how linear the structure of the story was at first. And yes, I will explain why. Because it was trying to introduce elements and core story functions first. And then it went and expanded to a more open world system that allowed you to explore and to freely enjoy the game. The PS3 version still holds up to this day. Another thing that I want to point out too are the mainline posters of the game before it was released. In terms of those huge, long character compositional posters that were made with all the characters in it and with their summons, incredible. I'm just a little kid just looking at those posters thinking, this is so amazing. 13 has some of the best 3D art ever. It's oh man, I can't stop gushing about it. Yeah, Final Fantasy 13 for number 4. Now for number 3, Final Fantasy 15. I know you guys are probably thinking, oh man, here we go, this guy, he's going down the dark depth. Don't worry, fret not. I have my reasons. It's okay, relax. For me, 15 was a modern day fantasy fusion. I know that was what was advertised, but this game was originally Versus 13, which is the reverse of Final Fantasy 13 in terms of story, in terms of the structure of 13. Versus 13 was where it started for me. So I want to be absolutely clear where this originated from. So with the fantasy and the modern day fusion and this night dark tone, at the time they were showing blood and they were trying to make it dark and edgy. That was something that was very enticing to me in terms of flair and design. I loved how Noctis looked back in the day. So before 15 ever took place, Versus 13 was actually happening for 15 years from what I understand, more than 10 years from what I understand. I made a video about 3 years ago talking about why 15 was one of the best games of the last decade. Anyway, with the dark and the rugal designs, tones, and its outfits, I love the whole black aesthetic of the royalty and Insomnia in general. I love just the regalness and the beauty of Insomnia was something that meshed well. The layer side of it, obviously, and the heart of it. Again, taking the approach of 13, I felt that they still kept the aesthetic of reversing the structure of 13. What I mean is like I said before with 13 starts off linear and then it expands. 15, or what I felt that Versus 13 was trying to do, was trying to expand first and then go to a linear route. I think that they did an incredible job in pulling off. Now I'm saying this because I actually liked the vanilla version. Royal Edition is the definitive version. I loved what Tabata did, even though he's no longer in Square. I liked the story. I liked how linear the story was. I liked how I was bonding with Ignis, Prompto, and Gladiolus, and the payoff at the end. All of that meant something for me. This whole thing about lore, and I remember this whole conundrum of criticism involving lore, wasn't really important to me because the only thing I cared about was these guys. And also, the game came out in a very dark phase of my life, and it really helped with coping with what I was dealing with, because I was dealing with loss as well, and how loss in Final Fantasy 15, me going through this process with Noctis all the way to the end, and then realizing in death there is life. That's what I feel the game was trying to advocate. That was what the message was trying to do in terms of me. Everyone has their own experiences with Final Fantasy 15. My own experiences reflected on this game. Hence why this is a very important entry for me in general, and one of the best Final Fantasy games I've ever played. It just spoke to me. And so outside of it being nowhere near 6 or 7 or whatever, doesn't matter to me. I'm a fan. I'm still, to this day, I find that people still don't like 15. I like 15. I don't really care what people think or what people say. Like I said before, this helped me cope with dark times, and this legitimately was the first Final Fantasy I've ever played that literally made me break down in tears. I know it sounds silly, but it helped me, man. The Leviathan fight was a highlight for me. And Arden, I really liked Arden. I really liked his backstory. I loved how he wasn't really trying to be the villain. He actually was just trying to exact revenge and saying screw all the people that screwed me over. His motives were very purely to die. It wasn't to destroy the world. It was just to end his miserable life. I'm telling you, like, this stuff is dark, man. Stuff is some dark stuff going on in here. Arden is a dark character. Arden is, yeah. Also, with the fact that Ferrari, like I mentioned before in my Artist Spotlight videos, was prominently designing most of the characters with Tetsuya Nomura in this game, and he's done a terrific job with designs of Aranea. Also, he designed Arden as well, and so there's Roberto Ferrari credit in this game as well. Also, I like the battle system, and this was to me the very first time that Final Fantasy was taking a Kingdom Hearts approach style of action combat. Did they do a good job? Did they pull it off amazingly and perfectly? Absolutely not. I liked it. Speaking of scale, like I was talking before about the Leviathan fight, the Astrals also were grand in scale, and I loved how they were so big and massive, and when they were summoned, it was almost like the entire atmosphere and the land that you guys were in, or whatever the party was in, was affected. It was like this huge weather climate shift that I loved. You guys have to understand, you know, in regards to 16, 15 was already doing some of the grand stuff already in the game. You talk about kaiju stuff, kaiju battling and stuff like that. That was happening in Final Fantasy 15. Obviously not as much as 16. The grand in scale, the astrals or the icons or the summons or whatever you want to call it, it was in Final Fantasy 15 first. Speaking of astrals, I did like the design of Bahamut. Thought that his design perfectly fit the Dragon Knight King. Somnus also, the instrumental piece, not the ones with the vocal. That song to me is probably my favorite piece from Final Fantasy 15. Every time I hear that song, it just reminded me of from the beginning of Versus 13 all the way to the apex of 15. Yoko did a phenomenal job with the soundtrack. The OST is amazing, still amazing to this very day. Also, the small talk and the small banter between Noctis and his friends, just those small little things helped me in bonding with them so much. It's small, but I'm happy that they were carrying that tradition in later titles, so I really like that aspect of 15. Yeah, number 3, Final Fantasy 15. It will always be up there on my list on top 5. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, get ready for number 2. I know I'm gonna upset some of you guys, but I really like this game. I've been thinking really hard on it. So my number 2 would have to be the Final Fantasy 7 remake. I'm hearing the boos right now. I like the remake, guys. I really do, and I'll tell you why. I love action. I love the incorporation of Kingdom Hearts action combat. I love traditional turn-based combat systems, but I love more than that, action. And Final Fantasy VII Remake has the best battle system so far in Final Fantasy. Yes, I have said it, because it's mixing a more sophisticated Kingdom Hearts approach with combat, and at the same time, let's be honest, it's more like a let's pause for a moment to think here approach. You know what I'm saying? I love that approach. It creates more dynamic in terms of action, in terms of engageability, if that's a word, with combat, with boss battles. By the way, the boss battles, they're amazing. From Guard Scorpion all the way to Sephiroth. Love the rescore tracks from Iyumatsu that were redone by Masashi Himazu. You remember that guy I was talking about, Final Fantasy 13? Yes, in fact, he is the same guy that rescored from Final Fantasy VII, and he has done a miraculously insane job with those tracks. The Genova theme, ladies and gentlemen, that track alone is a banger. It's a slap. Personally, this game came out also right at the beginning of the pandemic. This, again, was a game that was coming out at a very personal time for me, and this game helped me cope through a dark time in my own life. What 15 did for me, fast forward, FF7R did for me, and just my mental state and what I was going through. But going back to the game, this was a visual masterpiece from start to finish. I loved how ambitious it was to try to change the story elements. I love that my favorite Final Fantasy character, Zack, is alive, it seems, and in another timeline. Just the unknown factor of the trilogy. It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to be a Final Fantasy VII fan. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And I believe right before the game came out, I played the demo. Oh man, how could I forget the demo? Yeah, I played the demo 1,000 times too. It was insane. I would play it so much and speed run it so much. Speed ran that sucker to the ground, man. I also like New Game Plus and how the other modes offer a unique experience and different from the main experience. You guys know me, and if you follow me on Instagram, I have drew heaps and heaps and heaps of fan arts from Final Fantasy Remake. Is so absurd. It just dawned on me of how hardcore of a fan I am for Final Fantasy VII Remake. It was crazy, but it was a good time. Now, in regards to the original Final Fantasy VII, I do like the OG of Final Fantasy VII, and for reference to my experience with Final Fantasy VII, though great, and it is on my top 10 of all time, just so you guys know, most of the people that I know and my friends had a great time experiencing this game. Me, however, when I was growing up, and I know this is like a side story, but I did not have a great time playing Final Fantasy VII when it first came out. Now, for some lore, finding out why, I was on Twitch about probably 2 years. There's still a stream of why Final Fantasy is my favorite. I'm not gonna say which one it is, but in that video you will hear firsthand my experience with Final Fantasy VII, the original version. Long story short, it wasn't a very happy experience. To make this even more concrete or more relatable, right, it was almost like Zack was dying in Crisis Core. Remember how you felt, you know, this guy that you loved, this guy that you wanted to root for in the end, wanted to support, who was a good guy, pure dude, he died. That's how I felt with the original Final Fantasy VII. Fast forward, FF7 has left a scar on me, needless to say. So upon speculation of a Final Fantasy VII remake, and then it actually coming true, and then me being excited for it, once again, like how I was when I was a child, the excitement for Final Fantasy VII renewed itself within me. And then I made up into my mind, this remake is going to be my redemptive return to Final Fantasy VII. Literally, the remake went full circle. And then when Zack being alive at the end, remake was my return to a lost love of what literally started my journey. Okay, so drum roll for number one. My number one of all time, my list only, Final Fantasy VIII. Yep, more boos, I know. Boos throughout this entire list, I understand. This is literally the first Final Fantasy that I played through from start to finish. And yes, this was the game that was the true band-aid at the time because of my personal circumstances, or rather my personal trauma from Final Fantasy VII. My dad actually was the one that got me this for Christmas to make up for what had happened to me in terms of my experience with Final Fantasy VII. Like I said before, my Twitch channel has the entire story entitled Why Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite one. This was the first tried and true Final Fantasy that I sat down and played through from start to finish. Boy, was it a journey. If I can just relive what I was experiencing when playing the game again and hopping on a time machine, you know what I'm saying? Oh man, your number ones on any Final Fantasy list should always be like this. 8 is obviously not the most perfect game ever done. It's not the most best Final Fantasy, the most definitive Final Fantasy. This was just very nostalgic for me, and what really helped me in terms of me being an artist and me just loving game design. But going to the game, right? I love Triple Triad. Triple Triad song is a banger. I don't care if you're annoyed by it. I love to see people being annoyed by it. It just makes me love Triple Triad even more, honestly. I love how you can break the game early. That's fine with me. I don't really care if the game is breakable. Who's gonna find that out the first time that they're gonna play the game? Come on, let's be honest. Nobody. So what if the drawing system is whack or the junctioning system is whack? Whatever. It's still cool. I didn't mind it, to be honest with you. I love Squall also, and I know he is deemed as a emo edgelord, but I related to him actually, and I loved his development. I kid you not, Squall has probably the best character development probably in all of Final Fantasy VIII. The shift of his character, of him becoming a leader, and then him understanding his responsibilities, and then him just being more happy and being more present, him in his relationship with Renoa, and the fact that lots of wounds that Squall has learned to hide, now he's able to be more vulnerable again. And I think that that's very important in Squall's journey. Saying all that about Squall is great. I love Squall, but let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, Laguna is the best character. He's the best character in all of Final Fantasy. He's the most relatable, he's funny, he's human, clumsy, but man, he's the coolest dude. Also, man with the machine gun. Come on, you guys know how much of a banger that is. Let me type that in so you guys can listen to it right quick. You know what I'm saying? Come on now. Here we go. That's it. That's all you gotta hear. That's enough for you to dive in. Don't Be Afraid is a banger. The boss battle theme is a banger. The OST, in my opinion, being the best compository work of Uematsu in Final Fantasy ever. The epic opening of Final Fantasy VIII holds up the structure of its story as well, and how it zips from present to past and then back again in a unique story structure this time. I like also the incorporation of dreams, memories, and time travel even. I honestly liked how ambitious it was trying to be in terms of destroying Final Fantasy VII, and I'm realizing that I'm having a little bit of some aggregated response due to what happened to me personally for Final Fantasy VII, but I can still appreciate the ambition that they were trying to do 8 in terms of being different, being bold, and trying to make a change. Final Fantasy is all about change, right? So changing the formula, that's something that I appreciate that 8 was trying to do. Ambitious enough also to introduce the aspect of time compression. The ambition alone to talk about something so complex, which, by the way, time compression, once you understand what that is, it will blow your mind. Where past, present, and future are combined in one timeline to save the world. Ladies and gentlemen, what a crazy and bold idea to attempt. And it was also trying to establish a love story, a dynamic love story. Not only a love story between Squall and Renoa, a love story between Laguna and Rain, Laguna, Julia, the love story of Idia and Cid, the love story of Irvine and Selphie, the love story of the Matron, the more signature work with drawing Squall and the cast were enough to get me drawing first and foremost realistic faces like how Nomura did Squall and Cypher and all the rest of the cast. You know, love Squall's also simple and layered design with the black. Got the design of one of Nomura's most unique designs ever, which would be the Gunblade. I also like the rivalry between Cypher and Squall, person and in design. I just loved how contrary they were to one another in terms of personality, in terms of color layout, design aspects. I can talk about this game for another 30 minutes and bore you guys out, but this game I've played all the way through more than any other game I've ever played in my life. I love Final Fantasy VIII. I don't care if it's imperfect, I don't care if it's flawed, I don't care if it has problems. That's the charm of Final Fantasy VIII, ladies and gentlemen. So ambitious, but I have to pat the team, Nomura, Kitase, all those guys that were involved in making 8, trying to outdo 7. I have to say, props. Amazing game. That is it, you guys. Thank you for hearing me talk and rant and be a fool in front of the camera and me explaining my top Final Fantasy games of all time. What are your top 5 or top 10 Final Fantasy games of all time? It's kind of the first time that I'm actually putting this all out because I've actually never broadcasted this in terms of my favorite Final Fantasies like this. Just a few of my friends and family know, and this is something very interesting that I recognize in writing these entries, is that most of these entries actually speak to me more in design than in gameplay, which is a very interesting and unique experience for me as an artist and a gamer at the same time. So anyways, that is it, you guys. I appreciate you guys once again for hearing me talk and share. If you guys can do a big favor and like this, so that way this can get out to more people who love Final Fantasy, because I'm trying my best to pump out more Final Fantasy content as much as possible. I know the algorithm is showing Monster Hunter because it's the most viewed, but I poured my heart out on these Final Fantasy videos. I have more Final Fantasy videos than any other video on my channel, so if you guys can like, subscribe, it would help me boost that. I really appreciate it. Much love to my Patreons, and I appreciate you guys for watching. You guys are amazing. Have a great day. Blessings to all of you guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Knew I could be my own defender. It really fucked me up and choose your own perspective. Evolved this far enough just to see life at clearance. Wolves howling at the moon, you like the secret weapon. Don't you dare come near me, gather strength to